Good morning. So we're going to prepare for Module 9, that final paper, and you will be struggling through your final paper, and I'm going to that writing conference thing where there's going to be agents there, so we're all going to have a rough week next week, but it's going to be great. I'm going to share screen so that we can talk about the sample paper that I found and just walk through a little bit of the stuff. Oh, and before I do the sample paper, I'm going to share the PDF so that we can just be sure that I want to check with you that what kind of literary conventions we're working with. If I can find my PDF on the share screen. Not that, not. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, so this is the prompt for the final project. I know you all looked at it in the first module and you probably looked at it again. We've been doing pieces of it in the milestones all the way through. And if I scroll down, the most important thing I want to look at is so number one is storytelling elements. And that's just what, we've been talking about narrative arc. We've been talking about character development. It's those kinds of things, right? The most important thing is select 2 literary conventions related to time period right? So just as a reminder, time period is the literary movement of that time. Most of you have like a modernist text. Some of you have gone older. And your contemporary text will either be postmodern, or some of you have chosen a late enough historical text that you're choosing to call it postmodern, and then like new sincerity or metamodernism or whatever we're trying to name the current movement we're in. And that's fine too. But think about these conventions in terms of the time period. So what is a common convention, say, of modernism? Maybe alienation, isolation, but find a resource that tells you that. Don't just take my word for it. Go to an expert resource and have that resource back up what you're saying is a literary convention. And you know that I have given you, and you'll get again, the module 9, this will be marked up and telling you where I expect research. So, if you just follow my advice and look at my marked up rubric, if you look in the announcements that I do, and if you dismiss your announcements, you can always go back to announcements you can just go up to course menu and choose announcements and you can go back and find them. But in that announcement, I have a marked up PDF that tells you where research should happen. And of course, because I do that, if the research doesn't happen, it's not going to be exemplary because I told you where to have your research. Pretty simple. So define 2 literary conventions for your toolkit that you believe will be most effective in expressing your goals as a writer and reaching the audiences you plan to target in your work, right? So I'm going to scroll down to the final project rubric and double check. Okay, because this is where it had a problem. The last time I taught it, the dean, another instructor, and I really worked through here because it kept saying literary conventions, but it kind of made it sound kind of like it was about genre. But it's not. It's about the time period. So look for the literary conventions in the classic works. Look for the literary conventions in the contemporary works. Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions, especially about literary conventions? And then I want to talk about themes for a
moment. I have a question about the paper, just in general. I think this is kind of a newer model for me of doing these milestones, because typically I would just do a final paper at the end.
Right.
And so I guess the question that I have is, how much of the final paper is, I know we're calling it milestones, but are we simply editing the papers that we've already done and then adding to them? Or are we like reconstructing something completely new?
You're welcome to edit what you've done up to this point. The idea is, though, that you'll heavily edit because you've learned a lot in the process, right? But you definitely can edit what you have up to this point.
Okay, that's good, because the other question I had was about the turn it in, because if you're using material that you used before, it may flag it.
Yeah, and if it flags it, just please, everybody be confident. When I get a turn it in that turns yellow, which means that there's quite a bit shared, I always open, I normally don't open your papers and turn it in unless I get a flag. If I get a flag of yellow or higher, I open it and I just check to see what's flagged. And so in this case, I'll open it and go, oh yeah, she's just working off of the work that she's already done for this class, and that's fine. But it's a good point, and so I know there's a way that students can check the flags and turn it in for themselves, and especially in your literary classes, the ones that require a lot of research, it's a good idea to check what your percentage match is, just to make sure. Somebody at some point, I don't even know who it was this term, but they had quoted directly from a Dickens book, but didn't put quotation marks around it. And so we just had to have a conversation of, how does this look? I knew it was an accidental error, but it flags, right? So that's a great way to catch it for yourself instead of, losing a couple of points and having a learning conversation with your instructor, right? Okay, so this is a pretty great version of a student paper because I like the way it breaks it out by what's in the rubric. And again, I'll email this to all 2 classes. So everybody here will receive it, and everybody watching, you should have got it in your email. And so, there's a running header with the last name and the page number. And really quick, I'm just going to double click this and show you. You can highlight this and say the font was wrong. You can go up here to the left to the home and choose the font. I could change it, right, for Dana, and see how it changes. And so it should be Times New Roman, as should your whole paper. And if the font color was wrong, like say red, you come down here to where you change font color and you make it black. It's as simple as that. It's crazy. So just please make those efforts. Again, really quick, I'm just going to show here. If you highlight your entire paper and you want to be sure that you don't have extra spaces between your paragraphs, actually, I shouldn't have done this, but right before we met, I fixed this one because it did. Just open up, you see I clicked the little arrow for paragraph and I got the whole paragraph menu. And then down here in spacing, you can pick 0 before and 0 after. But I highlighted what I wanted that to happen to. That's the key thing. And then hit OK. And I know you guys think that all I care about is formatting. What I care about is that you learn how to work with the formatting tools, because I've had, like when I submitted my manuscript to the Sarabande or however you pronounce it, press for a contest, they had different formatting than how my manuscript was formatted. And I had to be able to use these resources in Word to make it correctly formatted. So I'm just trying to make you better at using those resources so that you won't get knocked down in some effort you're trying to make as a writer just because you didn't know how to format Word. I mean, there's more skills than being a good writer, sadly. So, and you can always hire an editor. In fact, I was already going to enter that contest and somebody hired me to format their manuscript for the same contest. So I got 2 tries of making the formatting perfect. And I did hers probably better than I did mine, but whatever.
Just one question. Where did you go to select all? Because I usually don't do select all, and I know it's there, but it's a function.
Oh yeah, I'm such a shortcut person. I'm so sorry. So I'm not sure if I used to select all, but if your cursor is anywhere in there, I hit Control A and it selects the whole thing.
Okay, cool.
I believe there's a key that's like Control for Apple people. I'm not an Apple person. I think you can. This doesn't really look like it'll select all, does it? Right clicking. But the shortcut to it is just to hit Control A and I'll highlight your entire thing. And that's great for fixing margins, fixing something that applies to the entire work. And then, so for example, it wants self-discovery. I can tell it wants it to be hyphenated here, which that's arguable. But if you wanted to hyphenate it, I just right click it and it offers me self-discovery as I choose it. Right? So, and then just, you're working in one, these are storytelling elements. And then they did first person point of view and setting. So they told me what storytelling elements they were going to work in. That's helpful. Then I knew what they were going to be talking about. If I scroll down, they're doing examples from the classic and contemporary text. I just want to emphasize, it's interesting how self-discovery is coming up every time. I want to emphasize this person has incorrectly and I use this as an example for you, incorrectly in block quoted this. And why is this incorrect? You know?
Is it because of the space that's moving it over?
Yeah,
And there's no quotation marks.
right. And so if it was an actual block quote like the one below, there aren't quotation marks. But
Okay.
in order for a text to qualify to be a block quote, it has to fill 4 lines, more than 3 lines, 4 lines of your ordinary text. And so when you indent it this 1/2 inch for everything, it's got to be more than 4 lines, or you're block quoting something that shouldn't be block quoted. And see how it does have a quote mark there? If it was block quoted, you wouldn't want that. So basically, all I would do if I were the person is go like this. And then you could get into the whole thing about how they shouldn't have a period here. You should always introduce every quote, but you could arguably just make that a colon because they say this is going to happen. And so this is the definition kind of after the strength of Han's narration, colon, and here's the strength of Han's narration. And that's how the colon works. In this one, it's long enough to be a block quote. You can tell because of how long it is. So there's no quotation marks and the period goes before the, oh, look, they have an extra period. Jeez. The period goes before these quotation marks. I mean, they're the other kind, parentheses. But I just want to point out, you should rarely have block quotes. You should just paraphrase the most important part of it, rather than have block quotes, because I'm more interested in your thoughts than I am in what the person wrote, though I do want you to show me. And then they make an assessment of the author's choices. And this is interesting, you know, the power in Jenny Han's narration comes from the use of I statements. And then she defends it, right? The student who happened to be a woman did. And then use in future works, all you do is say, would I use this? And in the classic text, maybe not, you know, I mean, classic audiences were looking for something different than contemporary audiences are. So you might not use it. And you could say, I see how it works for the time period. It's not the, if you want it. Or you might use it, but say, I would do these things to make it fit for my contemporary audience. And then application, 1 paragraph. This person's written 2, 1 paragraph. Just a really short application. You can pull it from something you've already written if you want, but this is your writing. So she's showing me point of view, and she's showing me that from a hunk of her writing. But she gave me each one. So 1 paragraph on point of view, 1 paragraph on setting is fine. Does that make sense?
I have a question. All right, for the application part, we're actually providing an excerpt of our own.
Yep. Application is your own writing.
Okay. So if it's a poem, how long would I provide? A stanza?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a stanza is
Okay.
perfect. Just be
All right.
sure you provide enough to show that all you're doing is proving to me that you can, in this example, show me a stanza with first person point of view.
Okay.
So I don't need the entire context of the whole thing you're writing. You're just giving me the example of, you know, what you're doing.
Okay. Thank
And with poetry, again, this is why I said it was pretty tough to use poetry in this class, because this class is clearly geared towards prose, because, you know, not every poem you have is going to have a setting in it, right? So, I mean, sorry, but maybe just don't pick setting as one of your storytelling elements.
Can I ask
So
I have a question
Sure.
about, so I think it asks for application, I think 3 times or something, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Can it be 3 completely different works, or does it have to be sort of a continuation?
Nope, it can be completely unrelated. You
Okay.
could write it fresh for this paper. You could get to the end of where you have to and show an application and just make something up right there if you want. That's fine.
Great.
So then this person chose to talk about intertextuality, which is a postmodern characteristic, as is realistic fiction. And so she found Sharma and Shadhuri to talk about the relationship between one text and another, right? And then she took a genre characteristic and it's realistic fiction. this would be a question mark, right? A genre characteristic is not what we're looking for. We're looking for time period. So I better explain in the email when I send this paper out, it's formatted well, but it wasn't, the reason I sent the A paper is the content was A, right? And then there are examples, again, the person is not correctly offering me the quotes. When you have dialogue like this, that's really hard to format correctly, and I probably will not be hard on that because technically you don't use a block quote, but how do you show me dialogue if you put it all mashed together? Then I won't know who's talking, right? So block quote works easier for dialogue. And then it's the same things. Oops, oh gosh. There we go. It's the same thing as far as you're going to give me an example from the text, you're going to give me an application of your own work. And see here, the spacing's off. So just note that this is a nicely outlined, but maybe not perfectly formatted example, right? And I like these to be bold just so I can see the difference.
One question, is there a word count requirement for this paper or a limitation?
There should be. Can you see this when I switch to the PDF? Can you see the PDF? Are you seeing the Word document that I was showing you, or are you seeing the PDF right now?
Well,
It's the word.
the rubric that we have says 11 to 12 pages. It doesn't
It's
say
12 to 15 pages in length
12 to 15 pages, but doesn't have.
because they hate me.
A
It's just hard because you have to grade these in week 10 and anyway. So you have 12 to 15 pages in length. But note that if you make a mistake in your spacing or whatever, then your word count will be off. So let's do some quick math. Poor Sarah's probably a little bored, but we'll write pretty soon. So I'm going to pull up my calculator. There's between 250 and 350. So let's do 300 words per page. So I'm just doing 300 times 15. So 3,600 to 4,500 words. And if you fall within, like I would say 4,500 words is your max word count. And if your spacing's way off, I download your Word document and I look at your word count to see have you gone way over. But as you can see, these each only require a paragraph or two in answer to them. So it's pretty easy to stay within the limits as long as you don't get expansive in giving your reasons. And this paper, and the reason I encourage this outlining format for it is it's literally just asking you to show me that you understand the concepts we did. It's not a true paper. And it's one of the reasons I don't require you to have perfect transitions between paragraphs. I'm not looking for you to, eloquently come up with a 15-page paper that, smoothly goes through these things, because really what's coming out of it, what I'm required to grade you on, if you look at the categories in the rubric, is whether or not you understand the concepts. And so I'm backing away from, a perfect academic paper because I'm more interested in you succeeding as a writer. So we're just going to, dig into these concepts. And then it should have you walking away from this class able to dig into any book that you admire and figure out what you admire about it and whether you want to use it for your own writing.
And I just wanted to say that I do appreciate the fact that you're looking at things like spacing and font. Typically I'm just being honest, typically I don't like it when people are ticky, but I don't think it's a matter of being ticky. Here, I think it's a matter of understanding that if a manuscript is submitted or you have a finished product like a book, you don't want to have 3 different fonts in it. And I think, that helps me to think in a way that I'm not accustomed to thinking, because sometimes I miss the font, because if it's like auto, like when you go into the header, whatever the font is automatically, I've never really bothered to change it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that because at a minimum, it tells you that if you can't do it yourself, you have to talk to an editor. And I recommend figuring out how to do it for yourself because editors are expensive.
One other question I have about the paper, and I had the hardest time with the header, because it's very hard to go past 3 pages without it kind of getting all convoluted. I don't know if you have any.
Are you,
But-
are you inserting the header in the header space?
Yes. Well, I click on insert and then I click on header and I click on, each page different, but after the 3rd page, header 4 will come back on page 1.
You don't want each page different. You want each page to be the same. And so.
But it has to be a different number.
No, I'll show you though. Okay, so
Okay.
we're just really quick. I'm gonna pop into Word. I hope you guys don't mind, and thank you for your patience on this, but I'm gonna pop into Word and then I'm gonna share. it.
Sarah just said something that's helpful too.
Yeah, let me see what you said, Sarah. Yeah, you just add page number and last name. I'm gonna show you what that looks like briefly because I
Okay.
think it's helpful to everybody.
Thank you.
So,
I've spent so many hours.
right. So the way to do this that I think is the most effective, you see a blank Word document right now, right? So if you go insert, I would like to, thank you. I was like, I want to insert something. There we go. And then over here to page number, right? Pick
Yes.
page number, top of the page to the right
Yes.
is the fastest way to do it. See where
Right.
the cursor's blinking right now?
Uh-huh.
I just type in Fraser,
Yeah.
and now that's what's going to be at the top of every page. But watch. So I'm going to make a couple pages there, and I do that to make a new page like
Oh my
that.
gosh, that's so easy.
To make a new page like that, you just hit Control Enter. So if you want your works cited page to be separate like it's supposed to be, and not worry about when your text gets longer if it'll push it farther down a page, just hit Control Enter at the end of your paper itself and make your
Mhm.
works cited page. Then no matter how the end of your paper changes in shape as you edit, your works cited page will always start by itself on a new page. So Control
Mhm.
Enter is your friend. And then see, page 1 is Fraser 1, page 2 is Fraser 2, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Right.
all you have to do.
Yeah. I was always clicking on header and making it that way. So
Yes, much harder, much harder.
okay.
And I show people how to do that in one of my videos, but there's too many videos and not enough time.
Yeah, I guess so. I missed that one.
Yeah, and Sarah's right. Make sure when you add the name, then click outside the section in the body text like I did to hit Control Enter. Otherwise, if you hit Enter, you're gonna have too big of a, or it'll put your number on a different line, and yeah. So
Right.
do what you need to do and click outside of the header.
Okay.
Okay. Whew.
Right.
The final week, this is one of the reasons I used to run this in 510 is there's, in 529, there's not nearly as many questions in the final, because 529, you're just revising a short story and it's lovely. And yes, Sarah, I'm teaching 529 again next term. So I'm really excited about that. And hopefully I'll end up with some of you in my class, if not next term, and if they give me the same class the term after.
And what is 529?
Is it fiction fundamentals or is that this class?
No, that's
This
not
is,
this
I
one.
think it's, no, story and concept is 520. I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
I can tell you.
It's fiction
I know the
fundamentals.
numbers. I'm gonna see if I have the name of it over here in my,
Fiction fundamentals.
it is fiction fundamentals. I have it written on my, yeah.
So are you
So-
teaching 520 as well?
I am not. They only
Okay.
put me in one type of class, which I'm super grateful for because it's hard enough
Okay.
to be organized on. I teach 2 classes, but it's nice to teach the same 2 classes. Oh, and it turns out, according to Sarah, you can request me if you're really lucky, which is nice. Yeah, I would love to have any of you in class again because you've been great. So if you show up there, it's mildly frustrating, but you know me, so talk to me. What's frustrating about it is you pick a story and then you only work on that same story all the way through 529. But once you understand that and kind of give yourself up to the fact that revision should be the name of it instead of fiction fundamentals, which revision is the fundamentals of fiction, then it's fine. And Sarah, we did 529 together, didn't we? Yeah. It's a great class, isn't it?
Yeah.
Me, you walk away with something besides a
do.
grade.
And you walk away with something that's pretty close to finished. Or if it's not finished, you really understand what you still need to do to finish it, right, Sarah?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, 510 used to be my favorite class until I taught 529, and now it's my favorite class. And I see a lot of other classes when I team lead for other people, and I still think 529 is a pretty great class. And the thesis classes are really good. I like those. I haven't taught them yet, but I've team led people who teach them. Okay, so Joan is wanting to hang out today, so she's probably not going to write unless she feels like it. It's completely up to her. And then the rest of you, I hope you are getting your writing britches on because we're getting ready to do I wanted to do a character description one and then a different one. And that's because oh, trying to quote somebody to you haven't read yet. 529, you're going to be reading, and what is her last name? It doesn't have an S on the end.
Charters?
Charters. It does have an S on the end, and everybody thinks it doesn't. So Ann Charters will say something about how plot gets you moving through the book, but it's character that sticks with you after you've finished reading. And I really think that's true. You don't spend the rest of your time after a book, except for maybe if it's a really tricky thing, but you don't go, oh, how did they do that? Because you figure it out. The plot happens and keeps you reading. That you might care about that person and feel like maybe the character stayed alive in your mind anyway. And I've had really great series where I'm just like, I wonder what that person's up to now, And there's an author named Jasper Ford that it's the Tuesday Next. I'm gonna put it in here. I think it's like that Tuesday Next detective series, and it's about like what do characters do when they're not being read in a book, and it's kind of weird and fun. So for this one, we've done something similar to this already, but it bears repeating. So Joan, if you're writing it all just for practice, or if you're going to use this later, I know you're writing nonfiction, and I want to emphasize because I just, I have this memoir manuscript. We who write nonfiction, we're still a character because we can't write our entire selves. And so you're trying to decide how you're going to portray yourself. And so in my memoir, I'm trying to show this fairly uncertain person who's, kind of making her way through the military, who has this brother who's perfect, and makes me feel all the more uncertain. And so that's the character that I'm emphasizing out of all the things that I am. I have all the other places I'm confident. I'm a decent horse rider. I can cook, whatever. That's not what the memoir is about. The memoir is about trying to fit in the world of the military, what I never quite felt like I did. And so in yours, you have to decide, what is it about that part of me that I'm writing that I'm emphasizing. For poetry, this character development stuff is really interesting. It depends on if you have a true character in your poem. And if you don't, you have to decide what characteristics your narrator has. And so many poems have that kind of omniscient narrator feeling, but still, what type of person is describing this world to us? And so for this exercise, you might be thinking, Reggie, about maybe even just writing something about the character, and we could hear about your character, or you could write some prose or do a poem. I don't care. I'm just trying to say that the way this applies to poetry would be thinking through either having a character in the poem or thinking through what kind of omniscient narrator voice is talking about it. When we think of someone like Mary Oliver, she's got this all-seeing naturalist, who's observing the world to us and making it poignant. And that's the narrative voice that she does most of her poetry in. Right? And then Sarah and Kay, Sarah, I know you go back and forth, but right now you're doing fiction. So this would be, maybe Cassie, or this could be, I just forgot his name, the guy in the circle group.
Scott.
Scott, right? Kay, whoever you choose. Okay, so that was a long time to say. We often will write physical descriptions of our characters, and instead, what if you could give us entry into a different characteristic, like and I have a female example, but does she have a nickname? What did she do to earn the nickname? Does the nickname refer to the appearance or attitude, how she feels about it? And something I'm going to send out to the class that showed up on my cohort's Slack channel recently is every character has a major like a misbelief, like something that they believe to be true that isn't true. And so a lot of times, you know, a character will believe if I could just earn $1 million, everything in my life would be fine. Or if I could just make her love me, my life would be perfect. And so whatever the misbelief is that's driving their action, it's good to have that in your head too. So be thinking about what your character believes to be true that isn't necessarily true. And then I'm just going to throw in the chat these little ideas about the different entry into your character. Okay, so what we're doing is trying to get into character without saying she was 5'8" and had hazel eyes. You know, we're going to come into your character a different way. And in the hope, my hope in doing this is that you might have something revealed to you in your writing by having to pick a characteristic you haven't been around. That makes sense. So we're going to do timed writing now, and you can choose to use it how you want. Again, writing by hand is a great way to engage both sides of the brain, and we totally understand when you have a difficult time reading your handwriting on the side. Okay, so instead of writing a plain physical description, try viewing a character through a creative lens. Does she have a nickname? What did she do to earn it? Does it refer to her appearance or attitude? How does she feel about it? That's just one example. You can come at it in any way. You know, does she have a nervous habit like tapping her toes, or, you know, does she always rush to open a door so a guy can't open it for her? Whatever makes her really unique in that way. Okay, that was a long way in. On your marks, get set, right. You have about a minute left. Okay, time is up. Please try to wrap things up. How did it go for you?
Mine morphed like halfway through. Like it went from more of a inner description to an event.
Cool. Looking forward to hearing it. How about the rest of you? Was it successful?
I just wanted to say that even though I didn't write anything this time, a lot of times I'll take in information, and so I sometimes before I even put things on paper. So I don't have anything to produce now, but just saying that I am processing information for something that I can use later on.
That's really great. Yeah. I mean, I know that I'm better now that I've been doing this a lot, but I haven't ever been quick on my feet to actually write useful stuff. And so having time to think is always valuable. I think you're mute. Oh, I muted you, Kay. Sorry. I'm evil.
I started doing this in a narrative style, and I don't think I got enough information out there in this time period, but it's so hard not to jump immediately into the physical characteristics or something that's not as subtle as what you're suggesting. So
Right.
yeah, I'm thinking, okay, that's too obvious. How can I make that a little less obvious? So that's what I found as I was writing.
Yeah. And then your inner editor slows you down, which is fine if you have all the time in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it lets you be purposeful. You
Yeah,
have
I
any
like
thoughts, Reggie? Did it work out?
I kind of started, I got about 2 stanzas in, and I was able, since with poetry, throughout this course, I've been able to kind of point out this big convention with it involving self-actualization. So it kind of turned into me writing a piece with a character going through that process.
Nice.
So with that said, the characteristics of this character that I'm creating are kind of nuanced, but by the time you get to that last line, okay, you can see that this character is kind of leaning itself towards a lot of my works before, with them just being inquisitive and trying to figure out who they are as an individual.
Awesome. Okay, so who wants
you.
to go first? The row.
I think Sarah should volunteer. Sarah.
Do you mind, Sarah? Is that okay? I know that you're always. I know that
Yes.
yeah.
Not a nickname, but Cassie had been described as someone not made for everyone, but if someone took the time to get to know her, they'd never regret it. Her shy quietness and resting bitch face developed over years of self-protection and created a very intentional mask. The flip side of that was that she came to believe she was inherently incapable of connecting with anyone, partly due to fear of abandonment and partly because she just never learned how. She was told it was called an attachment disorder. That belief of inability to connect was shattered one day at a discount tire. An older lady sat next to her and politely asked how she was doing. Knowing she was going to be there a while, Cassie took a risk and said, "I'm great, hoping this won't take long because I want to get back to my quilting." "Oh, you quilt?" The lady looked at her and gave her full attention. "I do. I'm working on a wall hanging from my mom." "That's amazing. I've quilted for the last 40 years or so." Later that night, when Cassie was in group, she told Scott how one of her core beliefs had just been shattered, knowing that if you can do it once, you can do it.
Okay, I don't want to steal from everybody. Thoughts from the peanut gallery, which I'm part of.
Well, after, you know, these workshops, I feel like I'm really getting to know Cassie, because you write about Cassie. And I think that, you know, every time, and including this one, you kind of learn a little bit more about her. And so I think that's, you know, it's sort of like, okay, I want to know more about Cassie. So anyway, that you've done a good job, in my opinion, kind of making her an intriguing character.
Thank you.
And in this setting, I think, yeah, I could picture it and them talking. And I wasn't 100% sure about the very end, the very last line.
Knowing if she could shatter one of her core beliefs once, she could do it again, that line.
Well, I wasn't sure what the core belief was, but
That she couldn't connect to
Connect
anybody.
with somebody.
oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
I like the epiphany that the character reaches in the ending. It shows that that character is reflective.
I had that same thought, Reggie. And Joan's probably going to speak. I just want to quickly add, it's fun getting to older Cassie, because she's really thoughtful. Not that young Cassie showed up in class with me, and she's amazing, but older Cassie is dealing with what younger Cassie had to put up with. And I love, you know, how she has the language to talk about it. Joan, did you have anything you wanted to add? You're muted. You're still muted.
Can't hear you.
Oh my gosh.
There we
Okay,
go.
so I just wanted to say that I think that's a great example of describing a character without focusing on externals and looking at the character from a more internal perspective, because whoever we are, our person, our persona, it's not the physical appearance.
Right.
You know, who we are. I mean, that's how people perceive us and how people see us externally, but our personhood is not our physical appearance, and therefore we're trying to portray the character in their personhood. And I think that was a perfect example of that. And, you know, some of their maybe internal struggles to better understand themselves, because I think that was a part of her own self-discovery. So as we're discovering the character is also discovering herself.
Yeah, nice observation. Really nice. And you know, I almost think that you could have a fun first line of a section to have, you know, one of Cassie's core beliefs was shattered at a discount tire. That is just clever, you know, unexpected. And to have a quilting conversation at a discount tire and the stink of all that rubber, you know, when you have time to go back to it, you've got to put that awful sensory detail in there, right? I mean, if they could just do something with the rubber. Yeah, that was a really great piece of writing, Sarah. I think that, you're not writing Cassie in the MFA, are you?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, just because I mean, it's really gelling for you. I don't know if you want to miss this opportunity because you're writing well about it.
Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
Well, I'll go, but okay, I'll go. I always want to give a disclaimer.
And weirdly enough, and I don't know why, your sound is best when you're pointing this direction. So
Oh yeah, I think my
yeah.
speaker, sorry. Okay. I'll move.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
She sat quietly, alone on the lounge chair. Book beside her, she watched as the other ladies arrived, reading each one with a nod. As they gathered in the pool, she picked up her book, pretending to be engaged with the story, but her ear was inclined to their conversation. How could she join in? What would she say? She had nothing to say. Finally, one of the group called to her, "Jane, come in, the water's great." but she smiled politely and shook her head. She could not risk the embarrassment of saying all the wrong things.
What was the last words? Those
She could
last.
not risk the embarrassment of saying all the wrong things.
Oh. Okay, thoughts, people.
Has she met Cassie?
Maybe they'll quilt together.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, that is one of Cassie's biggest fears, right?
Well, I didn't want to say she's insecure or she's shy. I didn't want to use those words. I just wanted to kind of show that.
Yeah.
Um,
You want to hear my favorite
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of how you showed that? You have a bunch of women at a swimming pool and you didn't do it because she was nervous about what she looked like in her swimsuit. And I thought that was fantastic. That's a really different way to look at an insecure person who probably was also worried about how she looked in
Yes,
her swimsuit because
yeah.
it comes along with it, right?
Well, it is funny that you say that because it started out like that, but then I'm like, I changed it. So
Yeah, and I mean, would the rest of you agree with me that it's more interesting? I think we already know that she's also uncomfortable in her skin and uncomfortable about showing her body if she stood up and went to the pool. But we know that because she's afraid of saying the wrong thing. And it actually adds all this depth because instead of it just being her body, we know that she has all these other insecurities. I think that's great. Sorry, so I took over. What else do people have to say?
I hope that you keep going with that character. Because I think we're probably not starting at the beginning. And I think there's more at the beginning and the end. And then you could really build on it.
I agree with that too.
She might be, at the beginning of English 529, whenever you do go into your fiction fundamentals class, you have to offer 3 potential stories to work with, and she might be somebody that'll show up as one of your potential stories. Does she have a name? Do you know her yet, or
it
did
was
you just
it was
create
Jane. They called her Jane.
Oh, that's right. They did call her Jane, which is my middle name. So
There you go.
Right there on the screen.
It's a subliminal message there.
Exactly. Joan, did you want to add anything? You don't have to. And you're muted.
Muted.
Which I appreciate. It's great. It's great sound control. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that there's a similar theme going along with Cassie. And I think that that's important because I think, one of the things I was looking at was dealing with universal, I guess, the universal appeal for audiences. And so it doesn't matter what the exact or precise situation itself is, but I think it's something that we all deal with at some level, in some way, shape, or form at some point in our life.
Yes. Yeah. I have an entire memoir about it. Thank you, Kay. I think that you got something started here. Thinking about it. Energy, again, if you don't want to go, you don't have to, but we're dying to hear what you wrote. So
Okay. All right. Well, mine, it was a poem that I wrote from a first person perspective. And it reads, as I gaze in the mirror, I envision self-actualization. Oh, to feel esteemed by an image that breeds a proclamation. I have arrived to deliver a message and affirm what is me. A great hill of hopefulness, a promising yet puzzling sea. As I delve into the vastness, I ask myself, is this entity truly me?
you rhymed in 6 minutes. I'm
Like
so
that.
impressed.
I like that.
Thank you.
That kind of just makes your heart go pitter patter a little bit.
Do you all mind if I ask him to read it one more time? Because when
Yeah,
when
that'd be
somebody
great.
pulls that off, I start listening for the rhyme instead of fully paying attention. So can we try one more time?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
As I gaze in the mirror, I envision self-actualization. Oh, to feel esteemed by an image that breeds a proclamation. I have arrived to deliver a message and affirm what is me. A great hill of hopefulness, a promising yet puzzling sea. As I delve into the vastness, I ask myself, is this entity truly me?
Very good.
I mean, just rhyming existential poem in 6 minutes, no problem. So impressed. Okay, everybody, what do you think?
I think that the narrator has an extremely strong voice and strong message.
I agree.
Thank you.
And it is hard to write poetry and like on demand.
Right.
So I feel yeah. You did.
But I think he does have the narrator has a strong voice, but also to gaze into the mirror and, you know, all the rest of that. I just think there's also maybe an element of trying to build up that person's confidence, you know, so it's not like there is an element of insecurity there because you have to go through that to get to where I have a message to give and I have to give it. So, you know, this human being is not just, well, it's so easy for me to give this message. They have to work through that in order to get there.
Yeah, definitely a complex character, right? We don't think of him as being flat or one-sided or them. I gender all the time by author and we shouldn't. Do you have any thoughts you want to add, Joan? And you are muted.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it was amazing that you were able to do that in such a short time period. Depth of it, and I think that the character has insecurities, but more than the insecurity, I think the character is questioning and searching and willing to go into the unknown to figure out the things that they don't fully know about themselves.
Nice, like brave about what they don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Virgie, did I hear the word steam in there?
It's esteem in the third line, oh, to feel esteemed by an image.
Esteemed.
Yes,
Esteemed.
esteemed.
Because I heard steam and I was like, oh my gosh, he's pulling together the imagery of water because you know how you would stand in front of the mirror after a shower and maybe it's a steamy mirror.
Mhm.
So then I thought, oh, and then he's diving in. But you do have nice water imagery in there. And I think, you know, there's something essential about the sense, if it has waves, it's possibly an ocean. There's something essential about identity that's related to things like a massive thing like an ocean. You know, did we crawl out of the ocean, or you know, were we created from a rib, or all the big existential questions come from something like that, right? So you might have a little bit of play emerging under there that you could tease out if you were interested in those themes that are, you know, ideas that belong to sort of where do we come from.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Because towards the ending, I did mention a promising yet puzzling sea. So I can, yeah,
Yeah.
when I go back and edit this, yes, I'm definitely going to consider that.
Cool, great, awesome. So you all got me, and Joan got me there partly also as well on theme. And I remembered I didn't talk about theme with the final project. So can we take a theme moment as we move into the next prompt, which is, remember in English 510, for the way I've taught it anyway, it's really important to take theme beyond one word. So if we were going to, you know, assign a theme to, let's go with Cassie, because I think we could do it. What would you say the one word topic, what we'd normally call a theme, would be about this insight we get to Cassie, who believes that she can't connect with other people? Is it about fear? Is it about isolation? Like, what word do you want to play with so we can do this theme talk?
Probably fear.
Probably fear. Okay. So right now we have Cassie, who has fear about connecting with other people. Now, knowing what we know, and Reggie, you're on the, you know, unless you've watched the videos, Cassie went through the foster system and she's becoming an adult at this point, right? She's an adult. Yeah, she's a discount tire. She's got to be old enough to at least be doing her tires. I mean, she's dealing with how she arrived where she is and the trauma that's been in her life. Okay, so she has fear, but what value do we think that Sarah is applying to fear? What is fear supposed to mean in the context of Cassie? and she said it to us earlier, which is part of why I picked it. But why would Cassie fear connecting with other people? What is the larger way universally to talk about Cassie's fear?
Maybe the discomfort of doing it, because typically when it comes to discomfort, there's an element of fear with it.
Nice, yes. That's expanding it some. What about you, Kay or Sarah? And Kay, you're muted.
Fear is a result of abandonment.
Ah. Yeah, so that's a complete theme right there. Fear as a result of abandonment is pretty close to being a complete theme. Kay, your thoughts?
I don't know how to put it in short words, but just that longing to connect, but it's stifled by her fears. So
Yeah.
that universal need for other human beings in our lives. And yet, so I don't know exactly how to articulate, but if the fear is because of something she wants. I think
I
she
like that. I like that a lot, especially because Sarah has almost too much insight to this. And so, yeah, so why does Cassie have this fear? Maybe she has that universal longing to connect with other humans, or maybe, she's been abandoned and thinks it's not possible to connect with other humans, but still has that longing. So now we're expanding it even more. And again,
Mhm.
a good theme is going to be like a long sentence, a good theme isn't just going to be fear.
Mhm.
It's fear as a result of abandonment and longing for connection that she didn't even know she wanted. That would be a pretty cool theme, right? And the idea is to say, as an author, a theme does more in a book than say, I'm going to talk about fear, or I'm going to talk about existential being, or I'm going to talk about insecurity. Instead, you would talk about Jane's insecurity in the face of social pressure when she just is seeking belonging, right? And that doesn't even take us the full way. And what's missing, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time articulating because themes are really difficult, is that it should take us to that place where you as a writer, it's not that, I mean, I think of it in terms of teaching, but it's not as simple as that. You don't write just to teach somebody something, but most of the time, the readers will be changed and your character will be changed. So when you're thinking about Cassie's fear about trying to connect and thinking people can't connect with her, you're thinking about Jane's insecurity. We're thinking about the character looking in the mirror who's like, am I that person? And can I be the person that I'm hopeful I can be? All of these people, right? This is across the course of the poem, across the course of short stories or an essay or memoir, that character has to change, or it's not worthwhile, or their lack of change would have to be meaningful to the reader until we have some kind of change because we witness what not change does. That's the harder one. If it's easier to write a character who changes because you as an author can kind of control that narrative arc and path and witness the change yourself. Trying to change your reader typically will happen with the changing of the character. So your theme has to help. If you think of your character at the beginning of whatever you're writing, your theme will actually address that narrative arc at what you're hoping that change does to your character. What do they learn? How do they change? How do they believe in the world differently or see the world differently? We see it with Cassie, who's just like, I just had a core belief shattered. Maybe I can connect with people. And if she starts to believe that, it changes her entire world. And that's what we're looking for in a narrative arc, in the course of a poem. Something has to utterly shift, or why are we writing? Right. And that's what you have to figure out for your final project. No problem.
Well, I was thinking about that, one of those videos that we watched where the guy talked about longing, that word longing. And I just think that kind of ties into it in the sense that I think any theme really has to incorporate that kind of, what is it this person, or what is it that we all want?
Yeah.
And like, because I think about themes of bravery or, all the different themes that we've talked about. But it just makes me think about what's that innate need
Sure.
that comes out. So,
And if somebody says a theme is courage, because there's a character who's being courageous, well, for what? How does being courageous satisfy that character's longing? And that's a great way to think about theme.
yeah.
All right, that's great, everybody. It's so fun to talk about this stuff. Theme is the hardest one for me, and that's, I went through that book development program with that senior editor from Random House, and she said, and it was true, I had to write the entire memoir for us to figure out for sure what it was about. So asking you to come up with theme right now this early is tough. And what I thought it was about when I applied to the program and talked about what it was about really wasn't what it ended up being about. And that's discouraging. Okay, I'm going to share screen really quick to do this last one, as long as I can find it. I can't. Oh, here we go. Okay. What I want to do is this Laszlo Krasznahorkai. Now, I get extra credit for pronouncing that name, but I did look it
Wow.
up, and I highly recommend that. Just like when I used to teach Jumpa Lahiri, I had to go look up her name and find out, was it Hoompa? Was it Jumpa? It's so Laszlo Krasznahorkai wrote this really short flash piece. I'm going to read it to you, but you can follow along because it's on your screen, and then we'll do the prompt below it for the writing. So he writes, I would leave everything here, the valleys, the hills, the paths, and the jaybirds from the gardens. I would leave here the petcocks and the padres, heaven and earth, spring and fall. I would leave here the exit routes, the evenings in the kitchen, the last amorous gaze, and all of the city-bound directions that make you shudder. I would leave here the thick twilight falling upon the land, gravity, hope, enchantment, and tranquility. I would leave here those beloved and those close to me, everything that touched me, everything that shocked me, fascinated, and uplifted me. I would leave here the noble, the benevolent, the pleasant, and the demonically beautiful. I would leave here the budding sprout, every birth and existence. I would leave here incantation, enigma, distances, inexhaustibility, and the intoxication of eternity. For here I would leave this earth and stars, because I would take nothing with me from here, because I've looked into what's coming and I don't need anything from here. Incredible, right? So we could even try to talk about what makes this flash instead of a prose poem. Is it a prose poem? We don't need to have that conversation. We just need to be inspired by the way Laszlo Krasznahorkai turned on his head what he would leave here. And I'm briefly going to scroll us down to this Jane Kenyon poem that is almost like a response to it. It's really nice to pair. But I'm going to actually ask you to think of them both as you're writing. So this poem is Otherwise. I got out of bed on 2 strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birchwood. All morning I did the work I love. At noon, I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the walls and planned another day just like this day. But one day, I know it will be up. And she was married to somebody who used to run the writing program I was in. So the woman I work with knew her and knew her husband. And she actually ended up passing before her husband, but she wrote this when he had an unexpected health scare. And she was realizing that it could have been otherwise. So we have one person who is loving the everyday, right? She has gratitude and reverence for the moment. And we have another person who's like, I would give up all the moments for the forever that I see in front of me. So we see somebody thinking about how things end and leave it all behind. We see somebody who wants to treasure every moment of her current days. For those 2 things, I just want you to kind of hold those juxtaposing, opposing ways of looking at life in your head, but we're going to write about something ending. So write about a relationship ending. It could be work, love, a child leaving home. It could be, you know, you've raised a puppy and it's going somewhere else. It could be anything. Use the method that Krasnohorkai employs above to describe the shift in circumstances and the joy in what lies ahead. So no matter how painful this is, what unexpected joy could be in that. And then can you lift the list to the beyond? So see if you can't take this list or use listing. And in this case, Krasnohorkai talks about I would leave here, I would leave here, I would leave here. Maybe there's a repetition that works for you, or maybe you just do some listing. You can go about it however you want. The most important thing is writing. But think about these massive ideas that we just shared. And now see if you can write about them for 6 minutes. And your marks get set right. You have about a minute left. All right, time to wrap things up and come back to the screen. I'm trying to, but I'm very like a black hole. There we go. Well, while you're finishing up, I got some exciting news while we were talking. My first chapter consult and contest, I'm in the top 10 as a finalist for the thing I'm going to October 21st. And we will find out who won the best chapter when we're there on October 21st, but I was a finalist.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank
Great.
you. Feels nice to have a tiny success after a lot of rejections lately. So, I don't know. I don't know if I've had any acceptances in the last year. So I submit a lot of flash fiction out there, which doesn't doesn't feel any less bad when you get rejected, and it doesn't feel any less good when you're accepted. Even though it's tiny, right? Yeah. Okay, well, on that celebratory note, how did it go this time? Was this a good prompt for you?
Yeah.
It's a little more dense than what I usually offer in this setting, but I felt like you were all ready for it.
Yeah.
I think it was a great prompt.
Mhm.
Thank you. It's actually, I literally took it from one of the things we do in Birch Bark when we have those mix and meets. I believe Sarah was at this one.
It was hard to go a different direction.
I was counting on you to try to do that though. But you knew the prompt was so good, I couldn't resist using it here, and I probably shouldn't because that's our business, but whatever. You know,
That's cool.
I wanted you to have a good one. So, does anybody want to go first?
I'll go.
Okay. Point towards us, please. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. We stood beside the car saying our goodbyes. My hugs were quick and easy. I knew they wanted me to cling to them, to cry, and to say how much I would miss them. I knew their hearts were sad and needed comforting. I knew the tears in my mother's eyes should cause me to slow down, to reassure promises of coming home soon. I knew my leaving would leave them empty, bereft. I knew all these things, but something in me, that rebellion, that adolescent yearning for freedom, was stronger than the love I had for them. I turned and walked away, knowing they wanted me to turn back for one last smile, one last wave, maybe even blowing a kiss. But I kept on walking, not looking back, but looking ahead.
Oh, very nice.
Intriguing. Because is she leaving or like capital L leaving?
Lowercase l.
Okay.
But
Because you can go either way.
you could go either way. Yeah.
Which is a nice bit of tension to not resolve.
Yeah.
Yeah. More thoughts?
And as a reader, I felt that tension because I wanted to know so what type of leaving is going on.
I wanted to just say that it's one of the things we discussed when we first started talking about how the reader might impose some of their own thoughts on the work that they're reading. So my interpretation, after I learned that it was adolescent, is that either the person was leaving for college or leaving to go to the military.
Yeah, contingent reality. How many of you paused and had a leaving moment that was like that, where you knew somebody wanted you to stay? You know, I'm thinking of when I walked down back when people could come sit with you at the gate, when I walked down the skywalk, what's that called when you go to a plane?
Jetway?
Jetway. When I walked down the jetway to go off to the Air Force Academy, you know, I know my parents were so worried because my brother, no problem, but me? Go to the Air Force Academy. So yeah, you brought up my own leaving, especially because you didn't specify too much. You didn't impose too much character. You didn't impose too many like sort of parent things. You left it a little generalized, experiences that quite a few people could have had. Any other thoughts? That was great.
Because of the prompt, I started out interpreting what you were saying as she was losing something.
Yes.
Then like later realizing that she's the one that's leaving. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love the slow reveal on mother because it took us a while to recognize who was going.
Okay.
All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay.
I did a little bit more of the second, the poem. Well, I don't think mine is a poem, but my trigger was more the poem than,
More of the gratitude and reverence for the moment.
yeah. Today I see a soft dusty rose. Tomorrow I may not. Today I see the paintings on the wall, some I brushed myself, but tomorrow I may not. Today I see the emerald green and ruby red feathers on my eclectus parrot's chest, but tomorrow I may not. Today I see your Irish-eyed smile that matches the light on your face. Tomorrow I may not. Today I see the floral silk poet's blouse you wear that I bought for you for your birthday last year. Tomorrow I may not. Today I watch your movements, gestures, and almost unseeable body language. Tomorrow I may not. Today I see the world around me with my own eyes, the windows to my soul. Tomorrow I may not be able to. I may not see anything with them again until my soul passes to what's beyond and my eyes will see the glory. And
I like that.
You cut off the last line that you were going to use, right?
tomorrow, I may not see anything with them again until my soul passes to what's beyond and my eyes might see the glory.
It's got to be mine eyes might see the glory.
Yeah.
Because that
eyes.
was awesome, right? I mean, because it's such a reference to, I believe, I mean, it's been decades.
Battle hymn of the Republic.
Yeah. Which, I mean, there's a different kind of battle going on. It's still the same glory, right? Yeah. Thoughts? What did you think of this piece? Especially since we don't know who the I is, right? No pun on EYEI, since you were referencing vision in that.
Can you say the line again when you mentioned about seeing the soul?
Today I see the world around me with my own eyes, the windows to my soul. Tomorrow I may not.
Yeah, I really like that line. It kind of showed how much that person that they're no longer gonna be with, how much that person happened to mean to them. Just you can just feel it in your heart. You feel it in your soul. So that stood out to me a lot.
Yeah.
So for me, the word usage.
The diction.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well,
Do you
it's-
have anything you want to add?
I was going to say it, the repetition of tomorrow I may not is,
Yeah.
it's sort of like like a pause, and it makes you think about what you just said.
Mhm.
So it helps kind of keep things flowing because you know where you're going with it in one sense. You're going to the place of, who knows what tomorrow holds, but you're focused on right now. So I like that.
And Joan, you're muted if you're adding.
I think it conveys gratitude for, am I still muted? No. It conveys gratitude for the present. And I think that that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to be in a moment. It also has all that longing, right, that Kay was talking about, because it suggests sort of two things. When I first was hearing the repetition, I thought, oh, this is, somebody that's possibly terminal and that will not be in this world anymore. But then just the point that Reggie was pointing out when she talked about the eyes being a window to the soul, she's showing us that she's doing more with eyes than just, eyes. And then those same eyes seem to be what she may not see. So all along we realize she's been saying what she would or wouldn't see, but is it eyesight or is it the loss of an entire life? And I don't really know, but either way, it's very tragic. So I would be reading this poem again and again. It read like a poem, but it could have been a prose poem or a flash, but I'd be picking through it for the clues on whether I'm looking at a person, and maybe it's both. Maybe, eyesight would be lost first, but it's part of a condition, and all of that kind of doesn't matter. What matters is the way that helps this author make us see the world a new way and helps us change from having listened to it, right? I thought the Silk Rose Poets shirt was so poignant because it had been given to the person for their birthday, and that the love of the person wearing it, because not maybe they love it, but also it's a gift. And so she's with the person in the poet shirt's with the person that gave the gift. And there's just this connection there that makes me as a reader personally, want the narrator to keep seeing things and keep being there. It gave me longing to listen to that. So nice. Which brings us down to Reggie. Are you interested in reading?
Mine, it didn't go all the way. It didn't go into the joys what lies ahead, because I
Okay.
kind of ran out of time and I was gonna
Sure.
add another stanza. So I just want to give that disclaimer.
That's fine.
It ends with the audience thinking like, man, it got kind of dark and reminiscent. But I intended to add one more stanza.
Okay.
Okay, all right. And it reads, I see great beauty in those moments that I now must lament. I begrudgingly mourn those days that truly were heaven sent, plagued by the paradise that my mind refuses to escape. As each day passes by, my sorrow takes a new shape. Darkness constantly consumes this place that your warmth used to ignite. I close my eyes and imagine that sight that brought me light.
Oh, paraphrasing, how would that have ended?
I still was kind of playing with it.
How does that
But
become positive?
yeah, I still was playing with it, but I wanted to kind of create a contrast going on with, okay, we can see, all right, we're mourning this loss and it's sending us into this type of area of type of way of thinking. And then I was going to add another stanza to kind of flip it, and we're going to find some beauty in that lack or the loss of that beauty.
Okay. That would be difficult. No wonder you didn't get there in 6 minutes. But it's a good aspiration for it, for sure. Everybody's thoughts.
I think compared to your first poem, this one seems almost musical. Or lyrical, I guess maybe I should say. Maybe it's the tone and rhythm of how you read it out loud that added to that.
But I think it made it pretty powerful.
Thank you.
Well, and kind of getting back to how the listener, the reader, kind of superimposes their own knowledge and experience on what the text is. So I'm hearing a sense of loss, and for me, I'm imaging something like death. And I hear that you're trying to juxtapose like the sorrow and then the joy. And for me, that's kind of something that I see. In New Orleans, there's the jazz funerals, and so they go in with a dirge, and then when they come out of the cemetery after they've buried someone, then it's this joyous celebration of brass band music. And so I think that that is not a hard concept for me because it's something that I see and experience after. So that's kind of like the imagery that came to mind for me.
That's a pretty neat possibility for metaphors.
Not more of losing the relationship, losing someone, and how kind of trying to find what is life like without this thing, whatever it is. That's what I was getting from what you were saying, getting from the poem. I'd have to hear it again to make more comments than that, because sometimes I'm listening intently to the words and even to the rhythm and the lyrics of it, the lyrical sound of it. And then I have to go, wait, what was that about? So
That's why I find going to author readings difficult sometimes, because your very words will make us pause to think about something, and then we lose our place.
yeah.
I honed in on each day sorrow takes a new shape. I thought that was such a nice description of grief, and that grief doesn't ever seem to leave us, but we find a way to incorporate it into who we are. And that way it takes a new shape every day, and it takes on the way that we're new every day, or changed every day, or, so I thought that was a lovely piece on top of what everyone else said, which was great observations. So once again, the magic of 6 minutes emerges. And as Kat said, I think this last time, my creative partner with Birch Bark Editing, we can find 6 minutes, so if you could just do this to yourself every day, set a timer and find out what happens in 6 minutes. There's the prompts that I've offered on the YouTube channel for this, or there's prompts all over the internet. Those tend to be a little bit simplistic, but they can get you writing, and you can make them as complex as you want. And, you saw from what we did with the work from Mix and Meet, how inspiring reading something else right before you start to write can be. And it can impact your voice in really useful ways, because when you get inspired and then you turn and you write really fast, you inevitably will write in your voice, but your voice might take a little bit different timbre, or it just might shift a little and surprise you, but you won't be absolutely mimicking, because you don't have time to be the same as the person who you just. So 510's encouraging you to take inspiration from other writers. I also am encouraging you to do that too. And there's a lot more detailed ways that you can also go about that, like from mimicking exact sentences with your own words. All of those techniques are ways to find inspiration from people who, have cracked the code while we're over here still trying to crack it. All right. Do you all have any last questions for me heading into week 9, or for Sarah, anything to do with writing? Or
When would we ever be able to read your memoir?
Well, let's get an agent to want it, and then an agent will have me rewrite it. They'll have me edit the whole thing, and then you'd have to get a publisher to want it. So, in the perfect world, 2 years. In our world, 4 to never. I think if it doesn't ever get picked up, I'll just you know, self-published so that people in my world can read it.
No.
But not in a true self-publishing way. I know a lot of self-publishers who are very successful, and I wouldn't be like gunning for it. I would just get it into a form that people could read. But we'll see. I plan to keep the Slack channel going, and I do have my website and stuff. And so, I will put out word if anything happens. Those are ways to find out what's happening in my world and in the alumni's world of the people that I've worked with at SNHU, because it feels, I've said this a million times, so I'll say it again. When I went to Bennington, the best thing that came of it was my writing community. And I've just been trying to figure out how you all can get writing community out of SNHU. And it's the reason I do that alumni channel, is just to, on the off chance somebody managed to hit it off in writing, you can find each other there. Okay.
Okay, well, thanks. This is very helpful. Thank you so much. And thanks for that little run through about the paper too. That's very helpful.
Yeah, I think when I send out the email, I'm going to wait a bit to send the email out so that the recording of this can upload. It takes a long time because it's an hour and a half. And that way people could watch that beginning to get advice too, because I think it would be helpful if they need it. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Happy October 15th. And don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions next week. I'm totally available. I'm just traveling starting Wednesday, but I'm available. I'm going to try really hard to finish grading. Monday, I'm doing something all day. So Tuesday is the day. We'll see. That's a long day. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, have a
for
great
your
weekend.
work. Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye, everybody.